It was a Sunday afternoon program different from the usual noisy arena of politics. But that live broadcast, Capitol Clash, was about to witness a confrontation rarely seen in American television history. Before the eyes of the entire nation, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, as always, rattled off her conspiracy theories and unsubstantiated claims, while Representative Jasmine Crockett of Mississippi took the stage with a simple notepad and her wit. Greene's loud, aggressive rhetoric suddenly cracked against Crockett's calm, clear, and fact-based arguments. Greene's familiar confident demeanor instantly turned into fury and panic with Crockett's every word. This was more than just a political spat. It was a moment when a politician's mask dropped, and truth was confronted in its rawest form. So, what was in that notepad Crockett held, and what made Greene so profoundly furious in front of the entire nation? Let's delve into the backstory of this confrontation, starting from that Sunday afternoon, and explore step by step how the incriminating documents came to light, who acted with what intentions, and how this revelation shook American politics. The panel was broadcast live from Washington, D.C. The studio lights were sharp, the atmosphere tense. Marjorie Taylor Greene was leaning forward in her red blazer, speaking with her usual self-righteous, aggressive tone. The debate on the agenda was immigration and border security. Greene was making extreme, unsubstantiated, and sensational claims about the situation at the southern border. Our borders are being invaded. Thousands of criminals and terrorists are entering our country every day. Our government is deliberately turning a blind eye. They're trying to destroy America, she roared. There was a trembling anger in her voice, an authoritative pointing in her fingers. Though the host occasionally tried to intervene and calm her down, Greene wasn't listening. I'm speaking the truth. Americans, wake up! Across from her sat Jasmine Crockett, calm, even a little tired, but with a sharp focus in her eyes. Dressed in a simple but elegant dark dress, she sat with her arms lightly folded. She listened patiently throughout Greene's loud monologue, occasionally jotting something down in a small notepad. When the host finally managed to stop Greene and gave Crockett the floor, Crockett quietly opened her notepad. No theatrics, no raising of voice, just a measured purpose. I understand how disturbing everything Representative Greene is saying sounds, Crockett said, her voice steady and clear. However, when making such serious claims, we need to look at the data we have. First, she held up a page from her notepad, a graph of Federal Border Patrol apprehension data. Apprehensions in the last quarter do not support your invasion claim, she said. In fact, there's a significant decrease compared to the previous year. Greene's aggressive expression slightly twitched. You can manipulate data however you want. I know what's happening on the ground, she retorted. I know, Crockett said, turning to the next page. And so do I. Here's the Department of Defense's latest terror threat assessment report. I can't find any thousands of terrorists entering through the border as you claim. The report states that the main threats are cyber attacks and radicalization, not physical border crossings. This does not support your claims. The air in the studio grew heavy. The host was surprised by this sudden reality check. Representative Greene, the host said carefully, this data seems to contradict your claims. Greene's confident expression had now turned to anger. This is deep state data that's lying to you. I'm speaking what Americans are thinking. Greene was now leaning forward, hitting the table with her hands, trying to appear unfazed, though she was clearly rattled. This is a complete political stunt. Your party is trying to destroy this country, and I'm shouting the truth. But she wasn't performing, she was prosecuting, calmly, efficiently. And for the first time in her career, Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't sound like the loudest person in the room. Her voice had begun to tremble. What no one on the panel knew yet, not even the host, was that the notepad Crockett held wasn't just random printouts or her own research. These were notes from a meticulously prepared dossier, compiled by Crockett's private research team and a former inside source, detailing Greene's past false claims and how they were disseminated. The camera zoomed slightly on Crockett's face. She hadn't raised her voice once, but her tone, firm and deliberate, felt heavier than any shout. And the viewers at home? They were no longer just passive listeners. They were locked in, phones buzzing, Twitter, now X, starting to stir. This wasn't a debate anymore. It was transforming into an exposé. The host shifted in his chair, clearly uneasy now. Congresswoman, we know Representative Greene has made these claims before. Are you stating definitively that these data prove her claims to be false? Jasmine didn't hesitate. Absolutely. She placed another sheet of paper flat on the table between them. It was a full transcript of a similar claim Greene made at a rally 2 years prior. Then she turned to the next page, a report from independent fact-checking organizations detailing how that claim was disproven. And finally, an excerpt from a letter showing that even some members of Greene's own party had distanced themselves from these claims. I don't know where you got this garbage, Greene said, her voice rising. But throwing dirt on television doesn't make it true. It's not dirt, Jasmine replied, still steady. These are your past words, Representative Greene, and verified facts. There are no federal reports indicating thousands of terrorists entering this country through the invasion you speak of. This is a fairy tale concocted to spread fear. The host's earpiece crackled. He suddenly raised a finger. We're suddenly getting confirmation that the transcript and fact-check reports Congresswoman Crockett is referencing have indeed been cross-verified with publicly available sources. The domain confirmed connection to reputable data analytics and fact-checking organizations. The producer signaled for a screen cut, but it was too late. Viewers had already seen the real-time fact-check appear on screen. Greene's expression hardened. No more casual confidence, just calculation now, trying to figure out where the next hit might come from. At home, phones were lighting up. Reddit threads were forming. Facebook pages that had never touched politics were sharing links to the clip. A user on X posted a close-up freeze frame of Greene's face mid-reaction with the caption, "That moment when the lies unravel." It started gaining thousands of reposts within minutes. Jasmine, unbothered by the storm she was unleashing, kept her voice calm. People at home don't need to know complicated immigration policies by heart to know when something smells. A claim is made, fear is spread, but facts debunk it. You don't need to be a political scientist to read that. Greene shook her head. You're smearing me in public for political points. You have no proof. Then sue me, she said flatly. If it's false, take me to court. Silence. The host blinked. The entire segment is now trending live on X, and I'm being told it is the #1 trending topic in the entire country. Are you willing to testify under oath about all this? Absolutely, Jasmine said. And I'm willing to release all these documents to the House Ethics Committee, along with a sworn affidavit from the source who gave them to me. Now, it wasn't just Greene who looked nervous. The show's legal team would be reviewing this segment for days. But Crockett knew the risk. She hadn't come to throw accusations, she had come to set the stage. At that moment, she pulled out a USB drive from her jacket pocket. She slid it across the table, not to Greene, but to the host. There's a full copy of the claims, dates, sources, and a notarized letter from the source. Greene reached for her water. Her hands were trembling. The host's voice dropped an octave. We weren't expecting this today. Neither was I, Jasmine said. But silence helps no one. The control room was in chaos. Producers were talking over each other. The network's legal counsel was texting the executive producer. They had just broadcast something that could fundamentally alter the trajectory of an active legislator's career, and Crockett hadn't even reached her final point. But just when the audience thought it couldn't get more personal, it did. Before anyone ever questioned Marjorie Taylor Greene's political rhetoric, she was seen as an outspoken voice of the people from Georgia, who entered the political scene as an outsider, with a strong business background, drawing media attention with striking and provocative claims. Before and after her election, her proximity to conspiracy theories and the controversies she generated on social media turned her into a national figure. People liked her because they thought she was speaking the truth, at least, that's what they believed. She would attend town halls, sometimes armed, sharing stories of fighting against the corrupt system, positioning herself as the voice of ordinary Americans. But behind that image was a careful calculation. Greene's claims often lacked concrete evidence but were highly effective at triggering emotional responses. She grabbed media attention, provoked political opponents, and consolidated her base. Her loud, controversial statements became a brand, especially on social media. However, this also left her vulnerable to facts and verifiable information. Greene's political career was, in part, built on a narrative largely based on misinformation. This narrative sometimes ignored federal reports, scientific data, or societal realities, instead presenting a worldview based on strong emotions and conspiracy theories. To understand how Crockett's dossier even existed, we need to look at a name not associated with a lobbyist like Vance's case, but an individual who worked closely with Marjorie Taylor Greene's campaign strategies and communication for years, yet recently grew disillusioned: Sarah Davies. Sarah was a quiet but efficient professional with experience in public relations and media relations. She was close enough to Greene's operations to know how claims were formulated, which data were overlooked, and how they were presented to the public. She didn't speak much at staff meetings, didn't appear in photos, but she was always there, observing everything. Then one day, something broke. It wasn't a scandal, it wasn't blackmail. It was an incident at a youth forum. Sarah witnessed Greene repeating extreme and baseless claims about immigration at a high school event. A young girl in the audience stood up and directly asked Greene, "Do you have any evidence to support these claims? Our teachers at school are teaching us different things." Greene blushed, brushed off the question, and changed the subject. Sarah never forgot that moment. She had been a part of this machine for years, but now even a young girl's innocence was being tainted by these lies. The next morning, she started printing emails, carefully, selectively. She didn't go to the media, she didn't post online. She contacted an aide in Crockett's office, a quiet man named Rami, who had previously worked on data verification and civil rights cases. Rami vetted the documents for 2 weeks before even looping in Jasmine. And when he did, Jasmine didn't go to the press either. She sat with it. She didn't want a headline, she wanted the truth to hold. So she built her case piece by piece, night after night. She called in lawyers, ethics advisors, even a former federal prosecutor to quietly assess the legal weight of the material. It wasn't outright illegal, but it smelled bad. Really bad. This was a pattern of intentional misinformation and public deception. Greene had always been good at shaping perception. She presented herself as the voice of Americans, while mastering media manipulation and distorting facts. The image of the self-made woman had revealed a politician who quickly learned how easy it was to instill fear in the public and build her own political power base. Crockett knew that exposing another member of Congress on live television was not only risky but potentially career-ending if she got even one detail wrong. But she hadn't rushed, she had prepared. And Sarah Davies? She vanished after the dossier was sent. Her name was never mentioned on the broadcast, not once. But without her, the entire stack of evidence would have remained hidden in archived email threads and encrypted drives. Crockett hadn't just caught a representative flat-footed. She had exposed a system Greene relied on staying hidden until someone who helped build it turned against her. But Crockett wasn't done yet, because the whistleblower hadn't told her everything, not yet. Sarah Davies had never been in the spotlight a day in her life. She always wore simple clothes and jackets that never quite fit right. She didn't make eye contact in elevators, kept meticulous notes, for everything, and filed emails with obsessive detail. She wasn't a hero, at least that's not how she saw herself. She joined a media consulting firm in 2018 and began working with Greene's campaign. She thought the work would be just media planning and messaging, but it paid well, and she liked the feeling of being part of a significant political movement. Within a year, she was integrated into Greene's inner circle, which essentially meant finding the best ways to present controversial claims to the public. Sarah watched how the game was played. Greene knew how to press the most sensitive buttons of the masses to secure media attention. Claims that deviated from reality grew bigger with each iteration. And Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't ask too many questions. There was one moment Sarah would never forget. It was a Wednesday afternoon in April. She was asked to book a last-minute car service for a media consultant flying in to deliver a direct speech draft to Greene's team. The document contained detailed instructions for exaggerating the number of criminals entering the country illegally, minor changes, but with major implications for a particular political narrative. That Monday, Greene's team emailed back their approval. By Wednesday, these claims were being articulated at rallies and on live broadcasts, and by Thursday, Greene's followers were celebrating these truths on social media. Sarah filed the emails. She kept screenshots. She saved calendar invites, not because she planned to use them, but because something about it felt too easy, too smooth. Then came the question at that high school forum. The disappointment in the young girl's eyes and Greene's evasion deeply affected Sarah. That night, she pulled her external drive out of the desk. She started copying files. She didn't know what she was going to do with them, not yet. But for the first time in her life, she felt sick to her stomach about the job she had taken. The turning point came 2 weeks later, when her firm asked her to draft a talking point sheet for Greene's appearance on another live debate, where she would describe how the country was being destroyed by the radical left. The bullet points were filled with vague, unverifiable conspiracy theories. Sarah had written 100 of these before, but this time, she couldn't do it. She faked a stomach bug, left the office early, and went home. That weekend, she reached out to someone she had met years earlier at a government ethics seminar, Rami, now a policy advisor in Crockett's office. Sarah's first message was short. "You don't know me, but I think I have something your boss needs to see." Rami was cautious. He asked questions. He didn't make promises. But after a few days, he met Sarah in a quiet library corner in Baltimore. No cameras, no wires, just two people with folders between them. Sarah laid out the basics, not just what Greene had said, but how the campaign team had guided her step by step through a misinformation-funded roadmap to political success. What shocked Rami most wasn't the corruption, it was how routine it all sounded. No backroom deals, no shady cash, just emails, invoices, and thank you notes written like dinner RSVPs. Sarah didn't want anything, no payout, no media attention. All she asked was that her name be kept out of it. She didn't even care if Crockett ever used the documents, she just didn't want to be a part of it anymore. Rami brought the files to Jasmine. She spent nights reading every page, not just once, twice, 3 times. When she asked herself if it was enough to go public, she remembered something Sarah had said at the end of their meeting. "I didn't blow a whistle. I just stopped plugging my ears." But as Crockett prepared to go live, Sarah sent one final message, and it changed everything she thought she knew about the case. When the final email came in from Sarah, it was past midnight. Jasmine Crockett had been sitting on her living room floor, stacks of paper surrounding her, highlighter ink staining the sleeve of her sweatshirt. She hadn't slept properly in days, and when the notification chimed on her laptop, she almost ignored it. But the subject line read, "One more thing." The attachment was a voice memo, short, just under 2 minutes. In it, Sarah sounded tired. Her voice was quiet, steady, but worn out. "I didn't mention this before because I didn't want to complicate your decision," she said. "But a month ago the campaign's media agency started scrubbing call logs. They knew a story was coming. Someone tipped them off. Greene's internal communication records tied to Greene's calendar were deleted, including calls that came in just before key public statements. But I kept copies. You'll find them in the folder I sent tonight." Jasmine clicked the link. A spreadsheet opened, dozens of entries, times, dates, contact names, all matching perfectly with the claims Greene had made. She leaned back against her couch, staring at the ceiling. The room was silent, but her mind was a storm. She knew the weight of what she was sitting on. She also knew the rules. If she made this public without airtight verification, she'd be labeled reckless. If she waited too long, someone else would bury it. And if she got even one thing wrong, the media would spin it into a smear campaign. So she took the hardest route, the long, slow, careful one. She contacted a small circle of advisors, people she trusted with more than just strategy, a retired prosecutor, a campaign ethics lawyer, her mentor from her time in civil rights litigation. They weren't just sounding boards, they were her compass. One of them asked bluntly, "Do you want to win a news cycle, or do you want to change something?" That question stuck with her, because she didn't want a viral clip that people forgot about a week later. She wanted accountability. She wanted sunlight. For 2 weeks, she worked in near silence. No leaks, no interviews, just fact-checking and long phone calls. She read and reread every page Sarah had given her. She mapped out timelines, double-checked filings, matched claims to fact-checking reports. The deeper she went, the more surgical the pattern became. This wasn't just negligence. It was a system, a precise, predictable cycle of misinformation. She ran mock interviews with her comms director. She practiced her delivery in front of a blank wall. She changed the order of her talking points until each sentence landed exactly where she wanted. And when her team suggested she go through the usual channels, press release, private inquiry, she shook her head. "This isn't something I want buried in committee," she said. "I want people to hear it as it is, not how it's spun." Her team hesitated, not because they didn't believe her, but because they knew the blowback would come fast. "You'll make enemies," her chief of staff warned. "I already have," she replied. The night before the panel, she barely spoke to anyone. She turned off her phone. She sat at her kitchen table with her folder and a cup of strong black coffee, thinking not about Marjorie Taylor Greene, but about the voters who put her in office. The elderly woman in Arizona who wrote her a letter fearing fake news. The high school student in Texas who asked how conspiracy theories were dividing society. The small business owner in Washington who described how lies harmed people like him. They were the ones she carried in her thoughts as she walked into the studio that Sunday morning, not the press, not the party, the people. Her staff offered her last-minute notes in the green room. She didn't take them. She already knew what she needed to say. And when the host asked if she was ready to go on air, she nodded once. "Let's get to it." She wasn't there to play by the rules, she was there to challenge them. But when the segment started, she hadn't expected one particular viewer to be watching and texting screenshots before the show had even ended. It was 9 a.m. when the segment truly tipped, not just in tone but in trajectory. Marjorie Taylor Greene was visibly agitated. It started with a simple question from the host. "Representative, do you deny that your office made these claims directly, despite contradicting federal data and independent fact checks?" Greene didn't answer immediately. She stared at the host, then at Crockett, then at the folder of papers that now seemed radioactive on the table between them. For the first time since sitting down, she looked unsure of which camera to face. "I deny that my office did anything wrong," she said, voice clipped. "But she's not just accusing you of wrongdoing," the host pressed. "She's showing a pattern of claims and their subsequent refutations." "That's your interpretation," Greene snapped. "Actually," Jasmine interjected, "it's the public's. I've had over 700 messages since the show started, and that's just on one platform." The host blinked. "Wait, are you saying people are messaging you live during this?" "I'm saying they're watching," she said, holding up her phone. "And they're not confused." That's when Greene snapped. "Let's be honest, this is nothing but a stunt," she said, her voice rising. "Congresswoman Crockett wants to be famous, and she thinks using my name will make her a star. She's building a campaign off lies and out-of-context screenshots." "Call it lies then," she said. "On the record." "I just did," he replied. She tilted her head. "Good. Because defamation laws go both ways, Representative." It was a tense exchange, but what made it remarkable was what happened next. The host's screen lit up with live viewer reactions. The network had launched a rolling poll, unplanned, reactive, and raw. "Do you believe the claims presented by Congresswoman Crockett are credible?" Within 3 minutes, 68% of viewers clicked yes. The control room didn't cut away. They let the numbers roll on screen, live, right under Greene's face. And then came the breaking moment. A production assistant off-camera whispered something to the host, who adjusted his earpiece and turned slightly, squinting. "I'm being told we've just received a clip, an audio recording that confirms part of the timeline Congresswoman Crockett shared earlier regarding the origin of certain claims." Greene froze. The host continued. "It's a voicemail from a former campaign staffer, expressing concerns about being asked to massage figures for a public statement. We're vetting the source, but no!" Greene said loudly, cutting him off. "You're running with gossip now. This isn't journalism, it's a hit piece. You said yourself this was all out of context," Crockett replied. "The context just arrived." Greene looked around. She reached for her water again, but her hand hovered midair, unsure. In the background, the network began rolling a still image from the voicemail source, the date, the numbers, the audio clip's transcription, clear, damning language. And with it, the shift happened, not in the room, but across the country. People watching from Sacramento to Pensacola were no longer seeing a political debate. They were watching someone caught, not by the police, not in a courtroom, but by facts, evidence, and the inability to pivot fast enough. On social media, the moment blew open. The hashtag Greene Shredded started trending. By 10 a.m., major political commentators, both left and right, had picked it up. "Crockett didn't raise her voice once," one post read. "She just walked her straight into the truth." Memes followed, freeze frames of Greene's reaction to the voicemail, side-by-side screenshots of the documents. A TikTok edit with dramatic music was posted by a 17-year-old in Fresno and hit 1 million views in under an hour. But the bigger waves were happening offline. Calls were going out inside Capitol offices. Staffers were already reviewing past public statements. Reporters were huddled in newsrooms with headphones, replaying every clip they could get their hands on. And Greene's press team? Silent. Phones on Do Not Disturb. No tweets, no statements, just a thick, panicked quiet. Back in the studio, the host finally said, "We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by a media ethics analyst to provide some context." Greene pushed back her chair, clearly ready to walk off set. But Jasmine didn't even move. She simply leaned forward and said quietly, "You built your brand on speaking truths. So let's be truthful." But while Greene scrambled for damage control, the most unexpected voice would soon enter the conversation, and she had a message that couldn't be ignored. The moment they cut to commercial, Marjorie Taylor Greene walked off set, not storming out, but moving fast, her phone already to her ear. Her team wasn't answering. Texts weren't being read. She pushed through the side hallway of the studio, past interns and assistants, trying not to look rattled. Backstage, her communications director, Simon Larry, stood near the water cooler, clutching a tablet. His face was pale. He didn't say hello. "We're trending in 7 states," Simon muttered, not looking up. "And not in a good way. Pull the plug on all comments. Lock everything down," Greene barked. "I want the official account offline in 5 minutes." Simon hesitated. "You sure about that? Going dark makes it look worse." "It is worse if we start talking and say something wrong," Greene snapped. She wasn't wrong. One misstep now could set off a second wave, and it wasn't just about optics anymore. It was about political survival. Meanwhile, inside the studio, Jasmine Crockett remained seated, sipping from her water bottle. She had her folder closed now, hands resting calmly in her lap. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't gloating. But she was watching. As the break ended, the network returned with a media ethics analyst via satellite from Phoenix, Melinda Drury, a former public information specialist and media strategist. Her tone was measured but firm. "If these documents hold up, and it appears they are, what we're looking at is not a criminal indictment yet, but serious ethical exposure regarding public trust and misinformation. The House Ethics Committee would likely open a review, and depending on what's in those communication records, it could grow legs beyond just congressional oversight." Back in Greene's green room, the representative watched silently as Drury continued. "Spreading misinformation isn't always about direct financial gain. Sometimes it's about influence that becomes a habit. The key here is pattern. If there's a pattern, and the internal communications match public statements, that's actionable. Greene turned away from the screen. She muttered to Simon, "We need to hit back. Discredit the whistleblower." "Problem is," Simon said, "we don't know who it is. Crockett never named her. She played it tight." Greene stared at the floor. "Find out. If we can't go after her directly, we go after whoever fed her." But in the hours that followed, finding a single leak in Crockett's operation proved nearly impossible. Her staff didn't leak. The documents were under secure lock. No names had been mentioned publicly. And Sarah Davies had vanished like she'd never existed. Meanwhile, political allies who had stood next to Greene at rallies started going silent. A representative from Florida postponed a planned joint town hall. A political action committee in South Carolina pulled a scheduled ad by. Her inbox, once flooded with "Atta girls," now sat eerily still. Even her oldest ally in Congress, Representative Carl Denning, called her personally. "I just got out of a breakfast with donors. They're jumpy," Denning said. "You need to clean this up fast." "I'm trying." "Then try harder. Because no one's going to bleed for you, Marjorie. Not if this keeps burning." Meanwhile, inside Crockett's office, phones were ringing nonstop. Her staff scrambled to keep up with interview requests, verification follow-ups, and thank-you messages from voters across the country. She turned most of them down. No late-night shows, no podcasts, not yet. "This isn't about media," she told Rami. "This is about accountability. Let the facts speak first." Rami looked up from his laptop. "People are calling you a hero." "Heroes don't have folders," she said flatly. "They have instincts. I had paperwork. That's all." By mid-afternoon, news outlets were running split-screen coverage, Marjorie Taylor Greene dodging press questions outside a closed-door meeting, and Crockett walking calmly through Capitol Hill, answering questions without breaking stride. One clip of her answering a reporter went viral. "Do you believe this will end her career?" the journalist asked. "I don't care about her career," she answered. "I care about the people who trusted us to tell the truth." But the truth was still unraveling, because while Greene scrambled to plug leaks and craft denials, a new email had just landed in Crockett's inbox. This one from a name she didn't recognize, but with a subject that made her breath catch. "You missed something." And what came next would force Jasmine to make a decision she wasn't ready for, not in public, and not on camera. By Monday morning, the moment had already become a national flashpoint. Jasmine Crockett's clip was on every platform, edited, reposted, shared by teenagers in debate clubs and retirees who rarely touch social media. Some had trimmed the segment to just her most pointed exchange. "Then sue me." Others kept the full 6-minute stretch, watching Greene's composure crumble in real time. Cable networks ran looping highlights. Morning radio dissected every pause and inflection. Even a few late-night comedians tried to turn it into punchlines, though most admitted there wasn't much to joke about. It wasn't just a gotcha moment, it was accountability in real time, delivered without theatrics. Jasmine didn't do a press tour. She issued a short statement from her office. "My duty is to the people I serve. The documents speak for themselves." Still, the effect was immediate. Within 48 hours, donations to her campaign fund quadrupled. She was invited to speak at ethics conferences. A civil rights museum in Kansas City called to ask if they could archive the original folder from the broadcast. But she kept her focus locked on what mattered, the investigation behind the scenes. Her team worked around the clock. They organized every file into a clean timeline. They met with 2 attorneys who agreed to review the documents independently. The goal wasn't to trend, it was to hold. And then came the second email. Subject line: "You missed something." Sender: no name, just an encrypted address. Inside, a file titled Campaign Messaging Strategy.pdf. Attached to it, a transcript. Jasmine called Rami in immediately. He scanned it, eyebrows tightening with every line. It detailed a private meeting from the previous November, a campaign planning session, where Greene allegedly discussed using alternative facts to rally support for a controversial policy proposal. The transcript was short, but damning. The group discussed revisions to a pending healthcare bill. In exchange, strategists offered narrative control, a term Crockett had never seen used in that context for public discourse. "You think this is legit?" Rami asked. This event not only marked a turning point in Marjorie Taylor Greene's public image, but also brought the prevalence and impact of political misinformation in Washington under scrutiny once again. Jasmine Crockett's courage and meticulousness highlighted the public's demand for truth and accountability from politicians.